Today on Hebrew Vocab Boost, arms and the number 5. Oh, and getting shot in the belly. Today on Hebrew Vocab Boost, we are talking about the shoresh Chet Mem Shin, which mostly has to do with the number 5 and being armed. But in biblical times, it also had to do with the belly, specifically if somebody was getting stabbed. All right, it all starts with the number 5. So chamesh is the feminine number for 5. And remember, the feminine numbers are the ones that we use for counting. And also, of course, this is if we are trying to say that there is 5 of something and that noun is feminine, then this is the word we'll use. So this number, of course, is in the Tanakh, and most of these words related to the actual number are the same in the Tanakh as they are in modern Hebrew. In masculine, it's chamisha, and when we write it without nikud, which is the way we write it all the time, we write it with a yud to indicate the E sound. 15 is chameshesre in feminine, and chamisha asar in masculine. 50 is chamishim, and now remember, it's only the ones place and the teens that have a masculine and a feminine form. 50 is going to be the same for masculine and feminine as are all of the other numbers that are related to the word 5. 500 is chamesh me'ot, and we use the feminine form of chamesh because me'ah, which means 100, is a feminine noun. 5,000 is chameshet alafim. We use the smichut form, the construct form of the masculine version of chamesh, which is chameshet. And we use that because we're saying like 5 of thousands. And so we use chameshet, and then alafim, elef, is a masculine number. Remember, chameshet can also be used to mean the 5 something. And I saw this in the Tanakh. I also see it in modern Hebrew. So if we want to say the 5 boys that we've already been talking about or that make up a specific group, that's going to be chameshet ha-yeladim. But if it's girls, because girls, of course, is a feminine noun, it's going to be chamesh ha-yeladot. Now, if you watched my previous video on Shin Lamed Shin, which is related to the word that means 3, I talked about this construct form of the masculine, and I mentioned that it could get the pronominal endings. And so you could say something like shloshtenu, meaning the 3 of us, or shloshtechem, the 3 of you. But I don't think this can be done with 5. When my ulpan taught these forms of the numbers, we only got up to number 4, and then after that they had us do kulanu, all of us. And I think at some point, you're not going to say the 533 of us. So I'm not sure if something like chameshtenu is possible. Chamishi is the ordinal number 5th, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And of course, this is the first one that shows up in the Tanakh, because in Genesis 1, when everything's getting created, there was stuff created on the 5th day. And what was created on the 5th day? Sea creatures and flying animals, so birds and bats and stuff like that. Chamishit is the feminine version of chamishi, and so it's used with feminine nouns, and particularly in the Tanakh I found Hashanah HaChamishit, the 5th year. So chamishit can also be the fraction, 1/5. in the Tanakh and also in modern times. But so can chomesh. Chomesh means 1/5 in modern times, but it does not mean this in the Tanakh. It is a word in the Tanakh. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But it does, in modern Hebrew, it means 1/5. But it has another meaning as well. According to the Academia, it means a period of 5 years. This is, I think, especially used with the word tochnit, which means plan. So if you have a tochnit chomesh, that's a 5-year plan. And this is something that governments and businesses often will do. They will make some kind of a financial or economic plan for the following 5 years. And so that's how you say that in Hebrew, tochnit chomesh. There's also a noun, chimesh, and there's a feminine version, chimesha, and they both mean great-great-grandchild. So obviously chimesh is the great-great-grandson, and chimesha is the great-great-granddaughter. And this kind of makes sense if you think about it. If you think about yourself as being generation number 1, and then your children are generation number 2, your grandchildren are generation number 3, your great-grandchildren are generation number 4, your great-great-grandchildren are generation number 5. And so that's where we get this root from for this word. So Chumash is a word that refers to the first 5 books of the Bible. Now, most of us think of the Torah as the first 5 books of the Bible. And indeed, my Tanakh specifically states that the Taf of Tanakh stands for Torah, meaning Torah, and then it lists the first 5 books. But Torah actually has a much wider meaning as well, especially in religious circles. So Torah literally just means like teaching or instruction or guidance. And so what became the Tanakh was written down, compiled so many thousands of years ago. But there were a lot of oral traditions that did not make its way into what got written down as the Tanakh. Eventually they wrote down all of these traditions and all of these other various teachings that up until then, this all happened like in the first millennium CE. And eventually it all got written down. And so if a religious Jew says, I live by the Torah, they're talking about all of the religious teachings, all of the commandments, and all of the interpretations, and all of the various ways and laws and traditions that have been passed down from generation to generation. That is what they're talking about when they say, I live by Torah. So they still need a way to refer to these first 5 books. And so what they call it the Chumash. So when my son was 6 and I was looking for a Hebrew school / Jewish school for him, and I was looking for something online, I found one and they were asking, that was one of the first questions, does he know Chumash? And that meant, is he familiar with all of the stories in the first 5 books? And sadly, no, he was not. So we moved on and found something else for him. All right, so the second meaning of this shoresh is armed or equipped in a military kind of way. This meaning only shows up in the Tanakh 3 times, and it shows up as chamushim, which would be the plural version of an adjective chamush, meaning equipped or armed. So I found a potential connection between this meaning of armed and the meaning of 5. And where I found it was at HebrewVersity.com. And they show that the first use of this shoresh with the meaning of armed is in Exodus 13:18. So this verse says, Vayasev Elokim et ha'am derech hamidbar Yam Suf v'chamushim alu bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. And the JPS translates this as, so Hashem led the people round about by way of the wilderness at the Sea of Reeds. Now the Israelites went up armed out of the land of Egypt. And there's a little note that the meaning of the word chamushim is uncertain. HebrewVersity.com suggests that perhaps when the Israelites were leaving Egypt, they left in some sort of a military-like formation in 5 rows or 5 columns, or maybe rows of 5 or columns of 5. And in that way, they were prepared for whatever came their way. And then from there, it widened to being prepared militarily in other ways, such as in being armed or being equipped. I mean, it's possible. I've certainly seen weirder connections between the various meanings of the words of a shoresh. But I'm a little hesitant to blindly accept it, partly because I'm a little hesitant to blindly accept anything, but also because they are the only ones that seem to have made this connection. I don't see big discussions around it, or I don't see anybody else saying clearly this is how chamush got its meaning of being armed or equipped. It's just as plausible, or maybe even more so, that it's just a coincidence that these two meanings have the same shoresh. We see that all the time also. Anyway, so in the Tanakh, this is the only word that has this meaning of armed. We see it 3 times. The one time mentioned that we just mentioned in Exodus, and 2 times in Joshua. And in modern times, the word still exists, and of course we can use it in any of its 4 forms. It's an adjective, so it can be masculine, feminine, plural, or singular. So chamush, chamusha, chamushim, chamushot. And there are 2 modern verbs. Lechamesh, it's a PL verb. It means to arm someone. And then there's also a hitpa'el verb, the hitchamesh, which means to be armed. And according to the academia, the lechamesh, the PL verb, can also be used to mean to multiply by 5, or also to divide into 5 pieces. I don't think this is a very common use of this word, and I think of in English we would have a word like quintuple, to quintuple something. And I mean, let's face it, how often do we use that? Chimush is the shem pe'ula, the verbal noun of the PL verb lechamesh, and it gets translated as munition, ammunition, arming, ordnance. Tachmoshet is another noun that means ammunition or munitions. And we have one last word that shows up in the Tanakh and has a meaning separate from everything else. And this one is chomesh. And we saw this word meaning a 5th or a 5-year period of time in modern Hebrew, but in the Tanakh it meant the belly or stomach. And so there are a few different words that are used to mean the belly or the stomach in the Tanakh. And this one specifically is only used 3 times, and each time it's used, somebody is getting stabbed in the belly. So that's it for today. Now you know all of the words and the 3 main meanings of the root Chet Mem Shin. The number 5, being armed, and a belly that's about to get stabbed. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot bapa'am haba'ah. See you next time.